Dan, what the heck? It's the end of June, the beginning of July, and it feels like a furnace outside.
It is miserable. Yes, it feels like the dog days of August are already here. The heat. I can't stand the heat.
I know. I live in Ohio. You live in Wisconsin. And what the heck? It is unhealthy hot outside.
Unbearable. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. Like I say, it seems like every day just gets warmer and warmer and warmer.
Yeah, I have said a number of times my biggest blind spot and that what I am most embarrassed of about starting a firewood business is the weather. And when you complain about how cold it gets in the wintertime or how deep the snow is, I and the mud, to me, the two things that really shut me down is mud and heat. You
Yeah.
you you can't escape the heat like you can the cold.
And I think the heat is the main one that's always overlooked. Everyone's always worried about, how am I going to get work done if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's muddy out, but the heat, oh my goodness. It's it's the one thing that I'm noticing with my Versatube shelter.
Yeah.
It is providing that cover, the shade, and it is great working in
It
it underneath it.
does it. So it's not like radiating heat down onto you while you're under it.
No, not at all.
What color is the roof?
The roof is a charcoal gray.
Isn't it like if it was black, it would absorb heat and radiate it down underneath it? Or if it was like lighter or white, it would reflect the heat. Is that how that works?
Um, Possibly, I don't know. Being that it's 12 feet up in the air, I'm not sure with the sides being open that you would actually ever really feel that heat coming down.
Uh-huh.
But like I can step out of the shadow of the shelter into the direct sun and just step back in and notice a considerable change in temperature.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That really works. I have one of those, those canopies that you put up that you can put up and take them down.
Yep.
And okay, it's canvas, but you can still see sunlight coming through it. And yes, you can feel a difference while you're under it, but you can also still feel heat coming through. So
Yeah.
you're not totally escaping the sun.
Exactly.
But
And I think
that
maybe
is
I think that's where the height comes in. Like if that thing was higher in the air, casting a bigger shadow,
uh-huh.
you might not
All
feel
right.
that.
Well, that's good to know. I was curious to see how that works because I don't know about did they talk to you about the color of your roof? About not just for aesthetics, but for a functional roof. Would like the color of it play a role with that?
Yeah, I didn't actually have any conversations on that and I never gave it much thought. And looking back now, I'm not even sure why. I have another outbuilding that's charcoal gray, but you never see this. Like the color of you, like it's 12 feet up in the air. You would never see. The only
Uh-huh.
way people seeing it are going to be those on Google Earth.
And then we can't see you underneath it taking a nap.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. So that would definitely make things nice for you in the heat and then obviously staying out of the snow, keeping your machines out of the sun, which can fade the paint and all the rain and ice and snow that can get onto them.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of weather like rain and snow, it's for me, it's more or less having my equipment covered. It's not so much that I'm going to be out there. I mean, if it's thunderstorms or if it's a snowstorm blizzard, I'm not going to be out working in my wood yard.
Yeah, I agree.
But just being out of the sun and having like that shade, especially now, I mean, during the summer, working out there in the heat, it's been a huge advantage. Just tremendous.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I need to get something like that. Um, that's another unknown. When I move to my new wood yard, it is hotter over there than it is where I've come from because I used to work in grass and wood chips, and over there it's gravel and that ground gets hot and absorbs a lot of heat and there's there's no escaping it over there.
Yeah, I can't imagine walking. I mean, I like I said, I can notice a difference, just being out in the sun. And then to your point, like if you're on rock or pavement,
Right.
oh, whew, burning up.
But it's still my practice, and I don't even see that changing with or without a roof. I work in the mornings. I take my siesta in the afternoon, and then I'm back out in the evenings. That's just the way I have to do it. And then wintertime, when the days are so short, you just have a real compressed day,
Right.
because
Yeah,
I'm not going to
it's
work in the dark either.
well that's the challenge now is with the days, the daylight getting shorter. When you used to hold off till the evening or afternoon to get any work done, now you're running out of time.
Yeah. But what about the heat? And then you see what the heat was in the South and Texas and Arizona, New Mexico. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
I don't know how they do it.
And it's not healthy. It's not like you're freezing to death, and your bones hurt. I mean, this can kill you. I just saw in Europe, they said last year's heat wave killed over 60,000 people. Good heavens.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Whew.
I don't know. I don't think Europe uses air conditioning like we do over here in the States. So whoever invented air conditioning is my best friend. How did we live without air conditioning? I don't know.
uh, I don't either. Although I've only had mine on a couple days this year.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Ours is on all constantly. And that's what we live in Ohio. But I was sweating. I was sweating bullets this weekend, and not just because of the heat, but because I was working on my truck.
Uh-oh. The
Yeah, that
delivery
was,
truck?
oh gosh, stress. I when I if you are into your vehicles, or if you've been around, you've might have heard the problems that Ford trucks have with their spark plugs. And I grew up around cars. I was a motorhead. I worked through college as a mechanic. I've changed thousands of spark plugs, but I've never changed them on an engine where you run the risk of destroying your engine. that I do changing spark plugs on a Ford truck. Oh my gosh. I do not eat, and I don't even have the infamous engine, the Ford, the 5.4, which is like their most popular engine in all the F-150s, all their Ford trucks. They had problems with their spark plugs. Some of them would shoot out of the engine when they were driving down the road. And then the others, when you're taking them out, they snap off and they're stuck.
Oh,
They're stuck in the head. Well, the spark plugs, man, they're way down inside the engine. You got to use an extension just to get the socket onto them. And my engine is not the bad one, but it is still out of the same generation of these type of engines, and you always run the risk. Oh wow. I remember my friend Frank, he had his hand smashed at work between two coils of steel, and he said that he couldn't feel his hand, and he had to take his glove off, and he was scared to death to take off his glove because he didn't know what was going to be in there when he did it.
ooh,
And that
ugh.
was the same feeling I had when I would get the spark plug to finally come out of the threads, and I pull it up out of the engine, and I'm just scared to death to see what's on the end of that socket. If there's a spark plug without a tip on the end of it, or if the whole spark plug came out. And I did it one time, my heart was in my throat, and then I thought, oh, I got to do this 8 more times.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Oh, it was not fun. I had to get a fan because it was hot out too. I was in the garage, but then just the stress. This was stressful because if one of these snap off, like I know a guy, he has a shop that they work on a lot of these delivery vans, and so he has a lot of the Ford engines. He will not do tune-ups on them because of this.
Really?
And there was a
Huh.
time too where the Ford garage, to have a tune-up done on your 5.4, you had to sign a agreement up to $1,000 to get your broken spark plugs removed from the engine.
Jeez. Well, I was just gonna say, instead of having to deal with all the stress, just take it in and have it done. But it sounds like that's not even sometimes an option.
Well, so they've gotten better at it. Like I went and bought my plugs. So some of the other things I've heard too with like motorcraft parts, there's a lot of counterfeits out there. So I thought, it was only $20 more for an entire set. I went ahead and bought my plugs at the Ford dealer.
Ah,
And there was a mechanic in there. And it's like, how I say, if I meet a roofer or the infamous electrician, I just start shooting the breeze with them. So the mechanic was in there and I was telling him what I was doing. He's laughing at me. And I was telling him how worried I am about destroying my engine, changing a spark plug. And he says, Bud, he says, I've done thousands of these. I used to break them off all the time. He says, but I'm telling you right now, he says, drive your truck, get it really, really hot, pull it into the garage, put a 3/8 impact gun on your spark plug and just run it out. He said,
yeah.
I said, are you crazy? He says, no. He says, I'm serious. He goes, you start pulling those out. That's where people hear them squeal and then they'll screw them back in. They screw them back out. He says, that's when they snap off. He says, I just put an air gun on it and just zip them out. He says, I don't have them break anymore. I was like, well, you're crazy because I'd never do that.
So
I don't
you
know.
didn't do that. You
I didn't have the nerve. Are you crazy? No. I was just he's telling me to do it. And I was like, saying the guy that doesn't own the truck. But yeah, it was nervous. And those things were squealing every quarter turn. You turn it, you hear the spark plug down inside the engine squealing. Oh my gosh.
you should have said, give me an example. Just do one for me. Let me see you just do one. And then be like, oh wait, I didn't quite see it. Just do one more. Can you do one more?
Yeah, do it 7 more times, pal. Yeah, so my truck hasn't been running that good. And it kind of has a rough idle. And I've let this go for a while. And I was at the point of no return. I either had to do it or get rid of the truck and make it someone else's problem. And I watched, if you ever want to see, I watched a guy on YouTube. He snapped them off, and they make a special tool now to remove your spark plugs from your Ford truck. Crazy. And I watched him do that, and my heart was racing in my chest. And it wasn't even my truck. I was just watching it, how stressful it is. Because when you're extracting it, the broken part, you run the risk of it just popping down inside the cylinder. And now you're screwed. You got to
Oh,
remove the whole head. You got to tear the whole engine apart. You
jeez.
know? Oh my gosh, it's just stressful. But at the end of the day, I got them all replaced, and the truck runs great.
Nice. Well, good
Yeah.
job.
Well, I changed about 6 shirts. I'm serious. I was dehydrated by the time I was done from replacing 8 spark plugs. And then these plugs are like $9 each. And, I remember changing plugs. They were always 99 cents. And you drop one, you go, oh, that's okay. I'll just go buy another one, 99 cents.
Yep.
And now you got $9 spark plugs.
So did you do at least the tip where you got the engine warmed up nice and hot, or did you? Or
Yes.
not?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're supposed to do that. And my problem too were these coils. So in the old days, you would have one coil that fired all 8 spark plugs. So now, at least these Fords, they have one coil per spark plug. So they sit right on top of the spark plug. So it has this little skinny 8 millimeter bolt that goes through the plastic coil and screws into the plastic intake. And wouldn't you know, all of my screws were all rusted and hardly none of them would come out either.
Oh.
Ah, I took a number of them out with vice grips because the heads were just deteriorated. You couldn't even get a socket put on them. Just
Jeez.
crazy. That's weird. I don't know. And then my other truck, it's got the different engine in it. I'm serious. It was probably the easiest spark plugs I've ever changed in my life. All the coils just come right out. All the spark plugs just came right out. Easy.
Oh,
And then
my, oh
this one
my.
here, yeah. Well, it's just scary. I have said this before. I think the most important piece of my firewood operation is my truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
How else are you
every
going to
other
deliver?
every other thing that I have that I could lose or the Martians take, I have a plan. I got redundancy. But man, if my truck breaks down, I'm sunk. I'm out of business.
Yeah, you would be. The Mahoney Valley would not be receiving the number one firewood.
All the
delivery
flags would be at
service.
half staff in the Mahoning Valley because no one could get their firewood fix.
Life would come to a screeching halt.
Oh my gosh. You don't work on your own vehicles, do you?
I do not. And from what you've just told me, I'm not going to start doing it anytime soon.
Yeah, well, you got the truck. What engine does your truck have, do you know?
I believe it has the 5.4.
That is it.
Yes.
So here's my recommendation to you. If it starts making some grinding and slapping noises when it's running, just turn up the radio.
I already do that. Put in
Just
my
turn up the
AirPods.
radio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your plan should be to trade it in on another one.
That's yeah. The nice thing is I don't drive it a lot, so it doesn't have a lot of hard miles on it. But yeah, that's always my concern because I think you've mentioned this before and I've heard it somewhere else about those engines. And so I'm kind of always, worried
Oh,
someday.
I'm serious. If anyone out there is listening, even if you're not into cars, get onto YouTube and just type in 5.4 spark plug and then just sit back and enjoy the show, man. There's all kinds of people, just normal people that try to just simply change their spark plugs and watch them. I mean, it's sad to watch someone suffer through this, but it's also, you can learn a lot by watching other people.
So
Oh
I
boy.
wonder what that would be then if like you go to if I take this back to my Ford dealer or local garage to have the spark plugs changed. I wonder if I'm going to run into waivers and release forms and deposits or
Well, from talking to the mechanic, because this engine has been on the road now for a really long time, and they did do some redesigning, but that all depends on which year your truck is. But it sounds like the mechanics, you know how it is. You do something and you mess something up once, and you just start changing the way you do it. You adjust, and now you get pretty good at it. It sounds like the Ford mechanics now know how to avoid trouble. So
that's
probably these waivers might have changed, but it might be worth looking into.
yeah.
Hmm.
If I ever come across that time and
Oh
day.
my gosh. Yeah. What a mess. What a mess.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, but I did enjoy the visual I had in my mind of you sweating
I was
over
sweating.
under the hood,
Yeah.
looking down.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what if you watch my channel long enough, there's never any cussing on it, but that's because I never videotape myself changing the spark plugs on my truck. Oh my gosh.
That
And then, working on trucks is a little harder too. You got to stand on a block because they're higher up off the ground. And
Yep.
a lot of people just climb right into the engine compartment and just work like that. But I have like this big chunk of wood that I've saved, and I use that. That's my Ford block.
And you did this
Yeah.
all while the heat was on as well. So you were like double whammy. You were getting the heat from the
Yeah, and it was just hot out,
yeah.
just humid. And even though you're in the garage, and that's what I went and got me a fan and set it up on a table and just had it blowing right on me the whole time. But it didn't. Are you like that though, where it could be 30 degrees outside and you're just like, I don't know, just doing some menial task. And man, you just break into a sweat. It doesn't
Yes.
even have to be where you're just really, putting a lot of effort into it. Just, just like chopping vegetables or something. It's just
Yep.
hard to, and it's weird. Like when I'm working on a truck, if I'm just loosening like the battery terminal, just something really easy to get to, next thing you know, you're just drenched in sweat. It's hard to explain.
Yep. Just dripping. I'm the exact same way. I walk out my back door. By the time I walk back to the wood yard, all the, I my forehead's sweating. I'm already feeling like I'm, overheated and it's like, geez, I did hardly even do anything. My t-shirt's starting to get soaked and oh God, I just
Yeah.
can't stand it.
And that's a trick I've learned from my baseball days. I wear two shirts. So I have my uniform when I'm on deliveries, but I always wear a t-shirt underneath it because by the time you're done, that t-shirt's soaked, but your top shirt is dry. So when I get away from the customers area, I'll swap out my shirts and now I'm dry again. And I don't have to have 30 uniform shirts. I can just get
Ah,
by with one. So I have like a lifetime supply of white t-shirts that we just buy and keep washing those and bleaching them, keeping them clean.
but doesn't that
Uh,
add though to the heat, your body temperature?
Yeah, sometimes it does, but I don't know. It's just by the time you're unloading a half a quart out of the truck, I don't I don't really feel like, I'm pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not supposed to be in the sun anyway. So I work in long sleeves when I'm uh over at the wood yard. I try to always wear a uniform when I'm on during my videos just for fun. And so when I'm working by myself, I got a t-shirt on, a long sleeve t-shirt, keep the sun off of me, and I have this big gigantic hat. Like if you turn around, you can like knock someone's windshield out of their car because the brim is so big on it. And I wear that and I just do my best to stay out of the sun.
Those
When I said like when you learn that wood smoke isn't healthy for you, it was a surprise. And then we learned like back in the 70s and 80s, when they started realizing that sun's not healthy for you either.
yeah. Those hats are nice though. I also have a big straw hat and they make a difference as well. It's
Yeah.
except when you go to bend down to like reach into a space or like get underneath a fence or something and that brim hits and
Uh-huh.
it gets in the way.
Yeah. But that's just weird. It's just the way this year's been. We are just starting July and we're talking about the heat already.
Yeah.
And we're north of the Mason-Dixon line. We're north of Interstate 40 and we're still talking about the heat here. Gee whiz.
The heat is on. It's been a hot one.
So I don't know, Dan, are we going to go on vacation this summer and maybe we should go to northern Canada instead of to the beach? It's just around here you always go to the beach, and I
Yeah.
don't know. Now it seems like I don't know. Let's go the opposite direction. Do you have any plans for vacation?
I do not. Just coming up middle of August, going to the Northern Woodsman Show in Boonville, New York.
Ooh, I like it. That looks to be a fun time.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's cooled off a little bit by then.
Probably not.
Because it will be the middle of August. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be late September, early October before we quit complaining about the heat. Probably.
Yeah. I don't have too many, my I have my backyard I just get away in and I take a cool off in the pool and sit in the shade and that's I don't have like any real vacations coming up.
Yeah, we are not going on a drive or fly away vacation this year. We're doing a bunch of small ones. So we went to Buffalo to the Niagara Falls and we hit a couple museums while we were there. And now this week, Emily is home she's in college through the summer, but she has a week break. So we are driving to Dearborn, Michigan. We're going to go to the Henry Ford Museum.
Oh,
And then we're planning on later in the summer going to the Wright Patterson the National Air Museum in Dayton.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice little getaways.
That Henry Ford Museum is something. Have you ever been there before?
I have not.
I think it is a must do on your life's list of things to do. I have been there on two occasions, and it is just unbelievably large. I don't think it's possible to see everything, but it has everything: cars, trains, washing machines, hotel rooms. It has
Oh,
one of Link. It has Lincoln's chair that he was in at Ford's Theater. It
interesting.
has Yeah, it has Thomas Edison's last breath.
What?
Yeah. So when Thomas Edison was on his deathbed, they had 6 mason jars next to his bed, and when he finally died, they closed off all of the jars. and Henry Ford got 4 of them, and there's like 4 of them up in the museum.
Wow. That I did not even know was a thing. I didn't know. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, and it has the limousine that Kennedy was in for the assassination. It was up
Ooh.
there. So here is a fun fact. All right. So when I was in college, my roommate was an exchange student from Germany, and he wanted to go, so I took him up there. And so here we are. Now this was in the late '90s, so the security wasn't as tight as it was then. So here's the Kennedy limousine, and it had, those red velvet ropes that they'll rope off like
Yep.
an exhibit.
Yep.
So it was surrounded by those things. It had all these signs, do not touch. And my friend from Germany, his name's Julian, he says, I have to touch it. He said, he goes, he goes, I'm from Germany. I will never be here again for the rest of my life. And I'm standing right here. I need to touch it. So he looks around and looks to see where all the security is, and he reaches over the velvet rope and he touches Kennedy's limousine. And he had this big grin. He goes, there, I did it. I did it. He says, he's like the happiest guy in the world. So then I says, well, what the heck? I got to do it too, because like the alarms never went off and no one came to club him or anything. So I stand around looking around like a dummy, looking over my shoulder for security. I reach over and I touch the Kennedy limousine.
Wow.
Yeah,
Very
I did.
interesting.
Uh huh. There are 2 famous things that I have was able to lay my hands on: the Kennedy limousine, and the other one is the Enola Gay, the famous B-17 bomber.
Yes.
Yeah, I touched it too. It was on permanent display on Mud Island in Memphis, Tennessee, and I went and toured it. It was a big museum there. It's funny, like no one went to it. I don't know. I was like the only one there, and there was just no one around. And I literally went over the railing, walked out to it, and touched it.
Wow.
And yeah, so but it's not there anymore. They've moved it. I think it's
Hmm.
in. I think it's in Chicago now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I am I don't know if I have what's on my list of famous things I've touched.
Uh huh. Have you
Sounds kind
like
of weird
met
to
any
say.
famous people or shook hands with any movie stars or anything?
Oh, yeah, but like it's just escaping my mind right now. I don't know, but
Hulk Hogan,
that sounds no, not the Hulkster. The Rock,
the
I've
Mach.
met The Rock.
You've met The Rock.
Stone Cold, yeah.
Oh
Just,
wow.
briefly. Honky Tonk Man, one of your favorites.
Oh God, that guy's hilarious.
The
He is hilarious.
Honky Tonk Man.
Uh huh.
Yes, indeed.
And they were probably as excited to meet you as well.
Well, they didn't know, at the time. They, I wasn't anyone really at the time.
Uh huh.
Now, given, if the tables were turned today, I mean, now it'd be a different story.
Oh yeah.
But
Uh huh.
so, do you think at the Ford Museum they'll have a display and an exhibit on the spark plugs that are broken off?
Yeah, boy. The big failures of Ford. They'll probably have the Edsel, and they'll have like the broken spark plug and like a bottle of painkillers that the mechanics were prescribed when, when working on them. Oh wow. Yeah, but they fixed it at least though, supposedly.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
is good.
that's one of the annoying things when. So this is. I have a belief. I don't know if this is true, but I think it is. All these vehicles, they're all mass produced, and they all have the exact same problems. And it just seems like when a car has a problem, I think the mechanic knows darn well what's wrong with it, and they should just fix it. But they got to charge all of these extra diagnostic fees and stuff when they know darn well what the problem is.
Well, and nowadays it's more or less they just hook up a cable and a computer, does whatever it does and it will just read out whatever the issue.
Yeah, that's the stereotype now. You hear a lot of people say that the modern mechanics are lousy at diagnosing because they just plug the car into the computer and the computer tells you what's wrong with it.
Yep.
So all they do now is replace parts. I don't know. I don't know. I see some of these cars, I wouldn't even know where to begin. But I think a lot of this stuff is, in fact, I think it's even easier to work on. Like putting brakes. I had an old 77 F-150. The brakes on these newer trucks are way easier to replace.
Hmm.
It just seems like the bolts and everything are in better shape. You don't round off stuff. You don't have stuff that gets frozen like in the old days.
Yeah.
Um,
No
you
experience
know,
here with that.
yeah. Well, that's probably
Sure.
why you're such
Yes.
a happy
Definitely
guy, huh?
easier nowadays. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I have been a lifetime motorhead, but I started getting away from it. It just wasn't fun anymore to do. And that's where I had done a episode about I just found it painful to change my own oil anymore. And I was just paying people to change my oil. It was worth it to pay them $50 to change my oil when it would cost me like $30, you know?
Yeah.
But I had bad luck at this one place and I kept pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. And one day I drove past one of these quick change and there was no one there. And I thought, what the heck? I'm just going to pull in here, get a 10-minute oil change and drive away. So I pull in and the guy, scans my VIN number and he starts typing into his computer and he says, we can give you the premium oil change. It is $109. He said, and I says, whoa. I says, bud, I'm serious. I think I'm at the wrong place. He goes, oh, well, we can go to, that's with the premium oil. For the standard oil, you can save some money. It comes down to, it was like $87. And I says, buddy, we're not even on the same, we're not even in the same universe. I said, I just feel, I don't want you to be mad at me, but I'm just gonna leave. He goes, oh, that's okay. I understand. So I drove off. I was like, good gosh, they're charging people that much money to
Yeah.
change their oil.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
went to Walmart. I got me a $5 filter, a $20 jug of oil, and it was probably one of the easiest oil changes I ever did.
well, there you go.
Yeah. Gosh. Unbelievable. $106 for an oil
Yeah.
change.
Well, when I start needing my next oil change and my brakes done, I'm driving to Ohio.
Yeah, I had thought about, Ohio wood burner and oil change. Was going to start a new business. If I can make that much money to change oil.
As
Jeez.
long as you don't have to work in the heat.
Yeah.
Only open from October through March.
Yeah. Well, when I was a mechanic through college, our place was not air conditioned. And I remember just horrible working conditions, in the big sweat box with hot cars. And
Ugh.
there were some mechanics that would get sick because of the heat. But that was when I was young and I was impervious to heat. And I'm not like that anymore.
No, none of us. I'm not, definitely.
Mm-mm. Well, all right, Dan. This complaining about the heat here is making me hot.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoy your little mini vacation and you cool off and unwind and it takes away your stress.
Yes, we're going to go drive our Chevy to the Henry Ford Museum.
Well, hopefully you have a good time and hopefully things cool off for a little bit and just get a little break in this heat.
Yeah. Yeah, we need a break in the heat and this humidity. Gosh, it's just miserable out.
All right. Well, I got nothing left to complain about, so let's wrap this
Well,
one up.
give me time and I'll come up with something. Just give me time. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and spending time with us here at Woodhound Studio in the cold, air conditioned environment that we find ourselves.
Yes. Now, back to beating the heat.
Dan, you go stand underneath that roof of yours, and I'm just going to stretch out here on this couch and crank up the fan.
Sounds good. We'll see you all back here next week. And thanks again for making the Woodhounds the #1 firewood podcast in the world.
That's right. And I want to tell everyone out there to be,
Safe,
stay,
cool,
and have
a great day.